Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for the time. We really welcome the opportunity to work with Budweiser as college students. We're very fond of your products. Our team members of Mark, David, and myself, and we really appreciate the time. We all worked very hard and very enthusiastically on this data. We did analyze your data and go through a couple things that we did. We provided an analysis on breweries by state, the relationship between ABV and IBU, and also some statisticals by state on ABV and IBU as well. So how do we do it, and what do we do? We came through and we had the data. We used ARCO. We looked for inconsistencies. We also found that the IBUs had some missing data. We went out and found some open source sites that we could actually pull from breweries' data and had some IBU and ABV information that was missing. However, we found some inconsistencies and we really didn't like the way it turned out, so we continued to just work with the data we had and go from there. We also imported some census data to help with some balancing of the data out. So first and foremost, we're going to look at how many breweries are in each state. And specifically on this slide, what we did is we have the more breweries, the darker and bigger the color. And so the bigger the circle, the more breweries they had. And we also have population count in there, as I mentioned. So here's breweries by state. So in order to keep the bar chart a little bit more skew with visually representing the data, we went ahead and just trimmed it to 10. When it was 50, it was a bit much. So we did states with most breweries, Colorado killing it over there with 47. And states with the least, we wanted to show those two. And here we go with states with the least. So now we're going to look at the comparison of IBU and ABV by state. So basically the bitter and higher alcohol content. So we kind of do the same thing with the circles in the states, where the higher the alcohol and is going to be the color, and the actual size of the circle will be bigger if it's more bitter. And you can hover over each one of those for that data. So here's what it looks like when you actually have 50 total states plus data, the median average of IBU and ABV put on here, and the gaps between the two. There's some really interesting scenarios where you got some really high alcohol content, some low bitterness, vice versa. We did make this chart specifically where you could turn each one off just to kind of get a good balance, because the overlay is a little overwhelming when you do that. So highest alcohol by state. Believe it or not, those breweries up in Colorado, they're killing it, 12.8%. Most bitter, believe it or not, we have Oregon up there with Yeti Country, just killing it with the bitter beers. So no analysis is complete without a box plot and a histogram. So here's our histogram, and the cool thing here is we noticed 5.5 is the sweet spot on beers. That's just where people sell beers, 5.5, and if anything, they veer on the higher more than the lower. And here's our box plot that guys like us love. So one of the things we want to look at is the relationship between ABV and IBU, and how we kind of came across this is, guess what? The more bitter, the higher the alcohol content. So this kind of charts that and shows it. That kind of goes without saying, alcohol is bitter, and IPAs are bitter, so those typically have higher alcohol content, and that would prove it here. We did a K&N, and we wanted to see how we could classify an ale, which can typically, when you think of an ale, you think of a lighter beer, but when you compare IPA ale, Indian Pale Ale, they have more bitter and a little more alcohol to them. And with our K&N, we were able to actually classify with an 83.15% accuracy if a beer was an IPA or not. So we wanted to kind of prove a little bit on the breweries per capita, because if you think breweries per state, size of state, one thing, it kind of really helps paint the picture for who is more interested in different breweries, craft brews, that type of things, and what states aren't. So what we did here is we thought this was pretty cool to show how many, how many of these states really just kind of have a lot of people in them with less breweries, or a lot of breweries and a lot less people. So it's just one of those really interesting data things we pulled from here. And here's the bottom 10. So, as you look at this, these are the tried and true, this is where I think, Budweiser is probably at the heart. This is the heart and soul, because this is where you're selling the beers that the craft market may not be as popular. Maybe it's not just, they're just not into the change. So in conclusion, what we would suggest is you probably would want to sell new concepts, new products with concept styles into the states with the higher breweries per capita, simply because they're the ones that kind of want new different products. And maybe push the existing products into the states with the lower breweries per capita. Maybe even come out with a lower ABV product in those states, because they're not really into maybe the heavier beers, and maybe a lower ABV is going to be a little bit better suited for their style. Maybe it's beach areas, stuff like that, where they're going to drink all day and they don't need the heavy alcohol content. I would like to ask if we could do more research, including sales data. So maybe we can partner with distribution, retailers, some relationships. And if we can include sales data, we can really direct you as to where we should go with the next steps. And thank you, gentlemen, for your time, and I really appreciate it.